Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. Today we've got Kim Ingleby from Energize Performance. I just wanted to get it right. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of things today because you've got an amazing story. I've been checking your website out and this little book here.
Yeah.
Hounds of Happiness, 52 Ways to Feel Good. And I think a little bit about your story is it's been very much about remaining happy in testing and challenging times. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think that's the same for all of us, though.
Yeah.
You know, like life is a roller coaster and a kind of journey. And the more you live life, the more you realize that you're not really striving, I don't feel, for like complete happiness the whole time.
Yeah.
You're striving to be okay and then to really celebrate the highs, but be resilient in the lows and ride that journey and make the most of each day. That's what I feel.
No, 100%. So for me, it's like happiness is almost like if you're pursuing the right thing and you're succeeding in it, then happiness can be the thing that comes from that. Yeah. Rather than I'm pursuing happiness as its own means.
Yeah, I think the older you get, the more you experience, and everyone's experienced different things, you realize that happiness, like any emotion, is temporary.
Yeah.
And so if we can really celebrate the happiness when it happens, then that can build resilience for the harder times that are going to happen. And I think when I was less experienced as a coach and in my work, I was like, the end goal is happiness. And now I realize the end goal is to understand yourself so that you can share happiness and also cope in those tough times.
Yeah. And I think, and 100%, you know, life is circumstantial. You could be having a great day and you get some news and it completely changes. But to remember the good times in the tough times is really cool, you know, because it keeps you going 100%. So tell us a little bit about your background, because I've been on your website and there's loads there. You've done loads. But let's start a little bit about your company, Energize Performance. So how did you get to that point to start a company to energize people and perform to their best possible life?
Oh, it's like a big question, but good question. So energized performance comes in the two categories. So the energized bit is about how to help people feel well internally. So sort of the mind and the body and the wellness and how they just take care of themselves. So the energy inside and out. And then the performance is more to do with how you want to live your life. So the performance in sport or adventures or whatever your goal or resistance or fear is, and then blending the two. And that concept actually came at school. I really, really struggled at school. I had a lot of bullying. I went to multiple different schools and really found schooling hard and lacked so much self-confidence. I mean, I was painfully shy. You know, the younger me now is like, how are you doing some of these things? Like I just really doubted myself, really didn't like life at a very, very young age. And then probably around 14, 15. So like that chapter was way before 14 and 15. So it was, I think, quite uncommon because it was so young and it was before social media and it was just a sort of almost like intrinsic thing. 14, 15, I started working at a farm life centre. I started riding horses, and animals gave me a sort of grounding and a purpose. And I had a natural sort of talent, inverted commas, with it and just really enjoyed it. So did some competitions and school number 6 or 7 where I ended up for my final part of school, my PE teacher, Nori Berner, still remember him to this day. I said for my project, I want to do something on horse rider fitness and mindset. He was, and there wasn't anything in that area then. And he was just really motivating. And he said, yeah, why not? And so I wrote pen and paper letters to like top riders and asked them, and they gave me some feedback. And then when I left school, I was like, maybe I could do something with this, but I didn't really know what. And I went down the route of getting my horse riding qualifications, veterinary science with horses, all of that section, and competing. But the concept of energized was always in my head, and then it evolved from there.
So going back to the school and the bullying and that sort of stuff, do you think that was as a result of the environment and it was the whole peer pressure thing and people just join in, or you know, because like we've been on the journey ourselves, and we made a big decision. We took our kids out of school.
Yeah.
And so we homeschool our kids. And I'm quite
Okay.
intrigued when I hear people's negative experiences of school.
Yeah.
And, let's say 5-10 years or whatever, you got to make the decision whether you're going to put kids in school or whatever else. What would your advice be? Would you say keep them in the system, take them out? What would you think would be? Because that's the conclusion I've come to. I just think the system isn't working. And so the best thing I can do is, rather than change the whole system, is change how we do it.
Yeah. I think it's really personal and really individual. And I think the school environment can suit some children, and different schools suit different children. There's 4 of us as siblings, and we all had completely different schooling.
Yeah.
For myself, I think it was a combination of different things. I think as an individual, I was quite awkward. I had or have dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculus, but I didn't have any of that formally tested until more recently as an adult.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that affected my social ability and social anxiety. And I was born in the north of Scotland, in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
On a farm.
Scottish.
Originally, yeah.
Wow.
So grandmother is from Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And me and my first brother below me, we were schooled in a primary school with 15 people total until I was 8. And then we moved down into central Scotland into a really busy environment.
Big change.
So I feel like I was probably just quite an awkward, child. There was an obvious pick. And then I was really, really bad, especially at maths.
Right.
So bad that, like the teacher, the kids were just like, seriously, what's going on? And I think that just made it an obvious, like bullying. I used to get really embarrassed, go very red, so there were just obvious things that kids would then,
dive on the back of it.
Yeah. And then if you're not feeling sort of, your place in yourself, then you can't interact socially, can you? You can't make friends because you don't know how to do that in yourself. So I think there were a number of different facets. And
but I think for me, so I see the school system as spotting those things earlier. You know what I mean? Like, he's going, okay, well, this person's not quite gelling or fitting or whatever. Let's find out where they fit. And almost like, well, it's one size that we haven't got time. We've got to get through this curriculum. We've got to get these results. And it's like the personal relationship with individuals and finding where they're strong isn't looked at enough. I've seen it in sport, where friends have been in the academy system and not made it because just being shouted at, and the ones that survive, and the ones that don't are weaker. It's not that, there's a different way to motivate them. And I think that's what I've seen, that one size fits all. And I think maybe now today we're a bit more aware of it, that we can
I think it's
find where people are at.
It's evolving and it's different. And like you said, it's the same in sport, the same in medicine. It's the same in many environments. I think it's about finding our own way and helping ourselves, and then taking care of, whoever we're taking care of, and giving them the best choices. But about understanding how to understand yourself and be helpful. That's what I would say.
So you now got this, you finish school and then you study?
Many chapters ago, finished school.
So you study, but at what point when you're studying, or what point on this journey where you start formalizing it into, I guess, the seeds of what you're doing now? Because we talk about purpose, and there's somewhere on that journey, there was almost, you may not start at the company or start doing what you really want to do, but there's a point in life where you go, this is actually what I'm really good at, and this is what I want to do. Where did it happen after school? Did it happen at work? Did it happen at college, university? Where on the journey you thought, actually, this is what I'm going to go after?
I love the question, because part of me is smiling right now going, I think I'm just at that point now.
I'm
still finding that point, more and I think everything navigates. So it's like finding my purpose. I think that evolves, and I'm still, finding that. But at the same time, so going back to, say, the school chapter and finishing that, if everything that happened didn't happen and it was easier, I know I wouldn't be able to do what I can do now. Through that sort of adversity and challenge came a strong desire to help people, and help people not. Originally, it was like not feel like I did. And now it's like understand if they do feel how I felt, how I can help them find their own like way forwards, whatever age they are. So my clients range from like 12 to nearly 80. So there's a huge range in the clients.
And different stages of life as well.
Completely. But we're all human and we all have doubts at different times in our life. But that whole point of when am I going to do it was probably around 14, I think, when I was like, I can either, give up to this whole situation that I keep finding myself looping in, which obviously wasn't the language I was thinking at 14, or it was like I can start doing things. And I did my Duke of Edinburgh. And that was a community of people. Nobody at the school was really doing it, so I had to sort of really persuade people to do that with me. Joined the community centre in the local city, which meant taking a bus and really sort of getting involved with that. It was doing the horses and the animals and getting a part-time job. And I think finding a sense of purpose, even though I wasn't feeling like I wanted to do that. And by doing that, then you get uncomfortable, then you meet new people, then things change. And I still stand by that. Like now through the chapters that I found hard, that it's like you have to get out, even if it's uncomfortable, you have to challenge yourself. But the chapter in between was very much, first chapter was horses. So I wrote a letter with an application to, work with horses, and that's how I ended up down south to start with. I also did Rally International, so fundraised and went away to Belize and volunteered and worked out there. And then I worked at Gleneagles and got all my horse exams and as an apprentice there with the horses. And then came down and back down south again, rode horses, did a degree in international business, worked in a pub and a nightclub, to sort of fund it all in this crazy
but then
kind of time.
They're very interesting. They're very social environments as well, like pub, nightclub or whatever. It's around a lot of people as well.
I think there was always because I was working, there was always a boundary with that. And so my sort of core values around giving back, charity I've done since I was 14, 15, helping people, animals, like the whole theme. There's been a similar theme, although it's like evolved. And then it was probably around 21, once I'd finished my degree, I did all the personal training, sports therapy, sports massage, worked in London for 18 months, understanding that kind of craft. And Energize was sort of formed in that point, but I was still riding, competing, working several jobs. It was all kind of a melee.
It seems like you got very busy, like from being in a remote place in Scotland when there's hardly anyone around.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like the opposite, going to London, it's like a lot happening, a lot of people and whatever. But did you carry on? Because, having a look at the website and stuff like that, you do a lot of physical challenges yourself personally, right?
Yeah.
So when did you start getting into that? Is that so you were working and always training? Was that the kind of relationship you had?
It's a good observation in terms of like the change of environment, but I suppose I never really considered that. It was just about following the things that I was drawn to, and making the choices. So when I did my personal training and sports therapy qualifications, there were 2 places you could do it, Trowbridge or London, in the whole UK.
Wow.
So it shows how the whole industry is like completely different. So there wasn't an option of like, oh, let's do it in the countryside here, which there is now. There was no option. That was your option.
Wow.
And I was like, that's what I want to do.
So I'm going to go with it.
So I had to do it. I mean, it was like, country girl in the city. And I'm glad
I still feel like that now. And I thought I feel quite city savvy, but I go to London and I'm like, asking people, do you know where this is? Because I'm just so out of practice with London.
I'm glad I did it. But so it was a real sort of transition with everything.
But so at the same time you're doing all this, then obviously the horses and that, but you compete, you run, you do all these amazing things. When did that? Did you just do that to challenge yourself, or?
Yeah. So the challenges. I wasn't a natural athlete, which surprises people, and I think. I don't mean anything by that, but just by the nature of everything that I've done. But through school, I wasn't like picked on any teams. I was the last on any team. I mean, I still remember like some teams not even being picked. Like the teacher was like, "So Kim, you're last, you'll go with them," and kind of like dying in the corner.
The worst one is when they go, we'll take this guy and you can have the other two. So you even feel half a person. Like, thanks so much for that.
Yeah. So I suppose the last year at school, there was a girl called Katie who was 3 years above me. And she just inspired me in the way of like everything that she did. And it was her parents' farm life centre that I then ended up working at. And she just made me realize that there were other options, that maybe I could do things, which led me to Operation Rally International now, and did that volunteering.
Just explain a little bit about that Operation Rally.
So you have to fundraise. So I did a lot of fundraising before. Well, first of all, actually, you have to do a selection weekend. And I went in the middle of winter to Yorkshire, having never really been out of, Scotland on my own to do something like that. And it was 24 hours, if I remember right, sort of out in nature in the middle of nowhere doing all these tasks and challenges. I was the youngest, most naive by a very, very long way. And you had to do like a little talk about something. Yeah. You had to do these challenges. And I never thought I'd get accepted. I went at 16, which was the borderline age for applying. And so I went when I was 17 nearly, and it was 18 when I was on the trip. And it's a 3-month trip where you do 3 community projects to help that sort of local community.
All right, cool.
And you have to have raised the money. So I did all the fundraising by having, like, I think I did like a 10K. I did 2 or 3 animal shows, just on our own farm. Yeah. I organised a party, which was, I still remember it. It was called a crazy do from 8 till 2.
Crazy do from 8 till 2.
And it raised it. And like now I think, how did I do those things, at 17? But I was really determined. And I think that determination came from the adversity of when I was younger, of like, there's a choice. I can either keep repeating this pattern or I can change it. But there wasn't really anyone pushing that apart from an intrinsic, I don't want to go back into that cycle again.
Yeah. So when you're going through that, and obviously now you look back because obviously you're helping other people, is that where you almost thinking about it and going through that process where you form some of the techniques and stuff that you teach now, do you think? Or
there's so many other chapters of my life and everybody else's life. I've done continual training and education, always, year on year.
It's a lifelong thing.
For me, yes. Yeah. Like, it's the classic, the more you know, the less you know. Like, it really is. And I mean, I did all the physical training, hormones, blood testing, all the science side. And then I was getting some shifts with people, but the mindset was still not, really shifting for people, but also myself. I didn't feel I had the tools for myself and to help others. So that's when I did my NLP, NLP masters, timeline therapy, trauma training. It's a lifelong journey of learning. And often people say, why are you learning another thing? I'm like, because I owe it to my clients that are still with me. And there's so much to learn.
And that's an interesting thing, is that thing of, you're not educating, although you are educating for you, you're educating with the audience in mind, the people that you want to help.
Both ways,
well. Yeah. So obviously you're going to benefit from it, but you've always got the audience that you're serving in mind to educate and upskill. I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
That's really, really cool.
So sort of looping back to your question around the sport, from the charity stuff to the riding just became a passion. That was like my thing. And I think I had a natural talent just in terms of being able to ride a horse. It's just something that I think most people can think of, something they can do, whether it's art, music, social skills, anything that's just something they find easy. Yeah. And I had an amazing instructor called Jane, who's still with us, Jane Pelly. And she, a horse ramp, fell on top of her and paralyzed her from the waist down.
Oh, no.
No. I met her, when she was paralyzed. Never feel sorry for her. I'm sure she would say that. She taught me how to ride, but she taught me more than anything, like how to live through adversity.
Yeah.
And just a most humble, amazing lady. And she would get on horses, paralyzed from her waist down. She would walk courses with you with, on crutches. She never put herself in a wheelchair or anything, still doesn't on crutches. So she can still like live. And, is a really well-respected instructor in Scotland. And I know I owe a lot to her in showing me what is actually possible.
Yeah.
So she taught me how to ride properly.
Yeah.
Then I did the training at Gleneagles. Then I came down here. I competed. I rode for Scotland once in the under-21 team.
Yeah.
And did 3-day eventing, absolutely loved it. I mean, begged, borrowed, stealed any horse, rode for people, had a couple my own that I bought from sales, like rescue horses that I brought up, and just loved it. But then got to a point probably mid-20s when I was like, I can't develop my business and compete at the level that I want and work in a pub to make the money. It was too many things. The thing that was compromised was sleep. There was none really.
So at what point did you realize that the business or the business model that you have was the thing to go after? What was that? Because you've got to come to that point where you go, you know what, I'm going to do this. So you, as much as you loved it and it was a passion, you had to make that decision.
I think it was, I know the exact event it was. I can still remember when I was riding, but I think it was overall, I was thinking, I'm not in a position where I can buy a yard, have a yard, create a whole thing that's mine within a yard.
Yeah.
I want to build a business that makes a difference. I have a choice now. Don't have the funding to compete my horse at the level that I'd like to. And, in life, sometimes you just know, and it may be the hardest decision and there's like grief and loss through it, but you also know that it's the right decision and you have to trust yourself. And it was a really hard but right decision. I know it was. That one event I was competing, it was a intermediate advanced, so quite a high event. And I was like, Kim, you're too tired and you can't compete tired. You need to be sharp with your horse. And it was just that moment, and it was really sad, but I knew it was right.
But that's the thing. There's that moment where you had to make that decision and that choice, and I think, but that decision was made enough, so then you pushed through and then went after the setting up of the business and all that sort of stuff. I think some people ignore that and just try and keep doing it all.
Yeah.
They know, but they just won't admit it, and so they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think there's that thing of knowing the decision point, and then there's actually acting on it.
Oh yeah, and I've carried on with other things too long, like we all have. We're human. So that was a hard decision, and then I moved from being out with horses into Bristol, got a job freelancing at David Lloyd. My business was already set up. It was running sort of for 2 years, so I could, build it freelance. I had an old bakery van that used to carry like the one horse in it.
Oh, okay.
And it literally was, you could see the bakery van through the like bad spray paint. And I packed up my flat, put it all in this bakery van, drove to Bristol. The night before I had
Why Bristol?
Because it was kind of near to where I was.
Okay.
And I had always had, so when I was in London, I worked for a high-end one-to-one PT place.
Yeah.
In the Cotswold, I worked in a local family gym. And then David Lloyd was a big, commercial. And that was always in the plan even though I wanted my own business, I wanted to experience those 3 different types of business so that I could then deliver the best customer service and also understand how different businesses work. So it was like a conscious choice.
Yeah.
But the choice was for like 6 to 9 months, and it's been many years on that I've had it as a base. But I came down, I parked up in my, bakery van and managed to find a flat in the end. And that was sort of on to the next chapter, and basically replaced the horse element of 3-day eventing with a bike, which never really fulfilled the cross country with a bike. And then began sort of working out what I would do, to fulfill the competitive angle that I found I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So you've got that going on. So then how did you attract clients, and how did you find them? How did you realize that you could make an impact with people?
A lot of it even then was word of mouth.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky. I've always been lucky that clients have just come through word of mouth.
Yeah.
But I think also because I chose to put myself in those positions to work in environments. So in the family gym, And then people would get to know me. And then in David Lloyd, that was a freelance position. So then people would get to know me. And I think if I hadn't done those positions, I wouldn't have learned how to talk to so many different people. I wouldn't have seen how business runs. I've also done loads of, as I said, charity work, free talks, doing your own business. There's so much that you need to give out to build trust.
Yeah.
To then get people to come back to you and go, could you help me?
It's a certain degree of being uncomfortable regularly.
Absolutely.
I think for me, it's like going to another networking event and then talking or whatever, and you don't know anyone in the room.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it's just on me, and you walk in there and you know no one, and then you just have to go once and go. And I recognize those cycles, and every time I do it, I was like, oh, it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do it.
Yeah.
But you just have to push yourself through the door.
Oh, completely.
Speaking.
So as we did Humans, like I spoke at Humans, what was it, last month? And you kindly asked me. And I said to you and Ollie, I was like so nervous about doing that. And so, I'm years and years on from the school story.
Yeah.
But going into Humans after my more recent chapter and talking, I was as vulnerable and nervous at that point. I just have a whole set of tools and setup skills that I can use that mean that hopefully I do a better job than, 20 years ago.
Well, exactly. But the point is, it's there are certain tools that I've maybe developed over the years for myself, just to cope with those situations or get through them. And I think experience does help. You've done it enough times, you make a few people laugh or whatever, and then you go, okay, I'll maybe talk to them afterwards and stuff. I think when I first did it, it was like, okay, I just want feedback. Was it any good? That was and now it's not so important now for me. It's more just like connection and have I made an impact?
Yeah.
I think that was a switch for me. It was like, first of all, I'm going in there thinking, well, did I deliver? And now it's like, well, did you get anything out of it? Because if no one got anything out of it, then maybe I'll reevaluate what I do. Yeah. I think that's how I approach it now, is I think about the people that I'm talking to rather than did I perform or not ever. Did I look good? Was I dressed right? That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Did I make a mistake? And the most freedom things I had was people can't see your notes.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah.
And what they don't know, they don't know. And
exactly.
Like, oh, I didn't get to point 7 and you'll beat yourself up about it. But to everybody else, it was a 6-point message.
Yeah, they didn't know about point 7.
They didn't know. They didn't know. Or was there? Or maybe you should come back again.
Yeah.
So it's I've learned those sorts of things. And I think when people are making themselves uncomfortable, it's amazing how much we speak in our own heads and about what's going on and what people are saying. So just tell us a little bit about the so you've got this business you run it. So the type of people that you actually help and how you actually help them. I think that'd be good.
So there's 2 sections. One is that energized section, which is, I'd say, mainly midlifers, but not all. It can be any age, as I said earlier. And it's people who...
What's a midlifer?
Between, say, 35 and 55.
Okay.
But it's whatever anyone wants it to be. At the point in the middle of their life when they sort of doubt themselves. But as I said, it could be someone who's 16, it could be someone who's 80. But someone who's intrinsically stuck in thoughts in their head and saying like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I doubt myself, and I'm not content. And so quite often they are externally high achievers. So they might be like CEO of a business, they might work, on Strictly, they might be an elite athlete, but they've got these intrinsic doubts and fears. Or they could be same as everyone, like an everyday person, that we have these doubts and they're stuck. They want more from their life and like, how do they work out what to do with their life? Sometimes it comes with like complex medical long-term conditions, and through my own experience and then training is helping people navigate life through like stress, trauma, grief, burnout. So often that will come, like a transitional point of someone's died in their close circle, or they've got injured, so their career's ended, or they've achieved everything, but they're not content. So that's kind of like one section, which weaves really into the next section that is, I want to do this big charity challenge. I want to win a race. I want to try and set up a business. I want to do the thing. Can you help me do the thing?
Yeah.
But they always end up weaved together.
Yeah. Okay.
It's basically how to help someone, as my tagline's always been, but like unlock your potential. And I have now added in like be helpful to yourself and be brave.
Do you think that doing the thing is actually part of the thing for them looking for that meaning, so to speak?
Yeah, it's all linked together.
Yeah,
and I think everybody has, what if I could?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what if you could?
So what's the biggest challenge you've helped people with to overcome? Someone's come to you and you thought, oh, wow, and they've gone ahead and done it. Is it someone that's maybe climbed Everest, or is it someone it's something where you look, when you first met them thinking, I've got a bit of hard work, and then they've surprised you of how well and how far they've managed to go?
It's a really good question, and I feel really privileged to have worked with every single one of my clients, and I could give you numerous stories, of inspiration and aspiration. I think whenever I see a client come in, I see their potential. All the fears and the doubts and the stuff they're saying, I'm just like, I see that person. I genuinely see that person. I'm like, how can I help you? Like, how can I help you? What do you need? Even if they don't know, they start talking, and then you can work out. I say externally, the goals that people have achieved that has been so exciting is, one client climbing Everest was amazing.
Oh, wow.
Just amazing. Huge achievement. I think some of my younger clients being chosen to represent the country, as a teenager and selected. And just picking the chat. There's so many amazing things, but obviously I know the backstory.
And you can't disclose it all, but what I'm saying is it's great that you can see the result of what you do.
Yeah, but I think also, because often I get, can I, like people say they're not worthy, inverted commas, their words, to work with me because I work with, the names. I don't put names, but like Strictly or whoever that I put out there. And I'm like, you are all worthy and you're all amazing. And that's just not, like airtime. It's true.
Yeah.
So the other things that inspire me more are people who, are really stuck in themselves and they've like turned everywhere and they've had no help, and that they have the courage to go, do you think you could help me? And it's gone from like a place of like grief, loss, burnout, complete like isolation in themselves, to being able to connect with their day to day. And I think that out of any of it is my, biggest purpose is like, if I can help someone live day to day at ease in themselves, then I've done my job. Because then also they will be able to do their own version of Everest, which is, maybe a half-hour walk around the park.
Yeah.
And for someone that is as big as, if not bigger, than the Everest.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's everyone's got different goals, right? So it's understanding that them being comfortable in who they are, first and foremost, to then be uncomfortable in pushing themselves a little bit more. Or
if they want to. Or maybe some people are just actually, they want a level of contentment rather than a level of dis-ease in themselves. And that's the greatest kind of gift that I can be next to them, to support them and kind of just be there as a belief for them until they realize that they're okay.
They're okay.
Yeah.
So the type of people that you work with, they seem to be quite diverse. You mentioned Strictly, high performance athletes, and then right away through to school kids.
Yeah.
So how do you help? Because obviously I guess that's quite close to your heart. Is it when you're working with children? Does it take you back? Or?
So they're mainly teenagers, and they're mainly through. Like I've worked with a parent that's then recommended them. It's not my main, client base, but and I have all the relevant qualifications for the age that I work with. But there's a connection, but everyone's the same, So when we're saying like, I work with Strictly, I work with all these people, they are humans. So when they're just sat there,
you
don't
see the name or the fame, you see
I see the person. So when the first person contacted me in an A-list, as it were, was like, what can I do for them? And then I pulled myself back and I was like, what can I do for them?
Yeah.
And then when I met them, I was like, how can I help you? What do you need? And I think if we can all just step back and go, like, ask yourself, like, how can I help myself? And what do I need?
Yeah.
Because so often we're like, we should or shouldn't feel something. We do or don't do something. It's like, how can you just be more helpful to yourself?
Yeah.
Like, what can you help yourself with today rather than should or shouldn't do? So yeah, any age is inspiring. But what I'd say in the late teens that I work with is they are so adaptable. 3 sessions, normally on average, unless there's like a specific competition or end goal, but is all they need. It's so inspiring.
To get them
to change it. And it can be some like a really complex, hard setup.
Yeah.
And the parents are always there in the corner because I feel that's responsible duty of care for them, even if they're like 16, 17, 18. But if they trust me and they trust the environment, it's amazing how it changes so quickly with that age.
So in terms of, so that's one side of the scale. And then you've got, like you said, 80 years old.
Yeah,
so
78, yeah.
78. So is it the same thing? Do you think about them still looking for meaning, contentment, or whatever? Is there a common theme at that age, or do you carry on as if you're going to live forever, or what does it look like?
I meet the client where they are.
Yeah.
And without repeating, I'm like, what do you need?
Yeah,
and I find it equally inspiring that someone in their late 60s, 70s would choose to work with me.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
And want to explore their life. And I feel, so if we look back to like learning and education, it's a duty of care and responsibility that I keep educating myself to provide them with more tools and growth.
Yeah.
But it's, what do they want? The same. They want purpose. They want to see what's possible. They want to see what's possible if they have injuries, illness, so their identity has changed. So maybe they used to do this and now they can't do this. So how can they keep evolving with the life that they now have?
Yeah.
So it's a huge privilege, any age. And at that age, it's a great wake up to remind ourselves to like live now. Because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
No.
We really don't. None of us do. Life shows us through both of our and every listener's experience that, it will be a ride.
Yeah. It's learning. There are ups and downs always, but it's just remaining sort of like in touch with who you are to get through those type of things. So what's obviously you got the business now and you've got a lot of clients and, and it's going really well. What's next for Kim? What have you got up ahead?
I was thinking about this. I was like, when you're often asked on an interview, like, what's next?
Yeah.
And I thought it's probably now is like, what's now? Because I had a few things more recently, heart condition, etc., through the pandemic and coming out of it. So I've kind of moved to like, what's now? And like right now is growing my business and serving the clients I have to the best that I can.
Yeah.
And then evolving it into offering more online courses and, like we were talking about earlier, a podcast and more resources that can reach and help more people, because my time is more limited now. So I know I need to build a range of offerings and resources, because it is my purpose to leave a legacy of tools and resources that people like, that's good. Like go and try that, because it might just help you.
Yeah, and that's maximizing your time as well, and maximizing your reach, like one-to-many versus one-to-one. I mean, one-to-one's obviously needed, but if you can reach and impact more people by doing the same amount of effort, so to speak, then even better. And I think podcasts are a great way of adding value.
Yeah.
But like we have this conversation once, but it might get listened to 500 times. There's 500 people now are getting inspired to say, well, I don't have to be perfect. I can't just assess where I am right now and make decisions in the now rather than beat myself up because I may have missed this out or whatever, and start living life from now, so to speak, and get the tools to be able to do that.
Well, hopefully, if they are listening to this point, which has been great, then they can write down. I always say, like, write down one thing that you want to action this week. one thing that's like limiting you, that is always limiting you, and how can you change it? Like, who do you need support with? And then what's a decision you need to make? And actually write the answers down and action them. And that limit, often we think the limit is a time thing, or well, it's normally related to a time thing, but we forget that the limit may be a thought that we continually have in our head that's become a habit. And so that could be a change that you start to make as well. And you don't need a massive positive affirmation like I'm great if you are saying to yourself you're not. But if you say I'm okay, I'm doing the best I can on repeat, at some point you'll shift to there. And that's a really helpful grounding space to be in. So yeah, if even one person listens to this and takes action on that, then but like I'm happy.
Right? And that's it. You know, it's simple things that could make a big fundamental change.
Yeah.
I mean, like for us, you know, we made a simple decision with the environment at the school, and it was just a simple decision where we just went, "I'll take him out then." Yeah. But it seemed that it's quite a simple thing, and obviously it had repercussions, whatever. But once we made that decision, it was like, we could homeschool at home. Yeah, we could. And then 6 months later, the pandemic kicked in and everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was quite weird, because it's like, oh, hang on a minute. We're not the only ones. The whole country's doing it. But it was just making that simple choice of evaluating it and going, you know what? This isn't working. Let's write that down. Right. What are our options?
There's so much resistance to change in all of us because we're comfortable with being safe in the knowing of what we know, even if it's not nice or comfortable. Yeah. So, but to change it, that's where things can happen, but we don't know, you know, what will happen with that. So like a sort of good example is I used to do a lot of running and charity things, as you know, and with the heart thing, I literally couldn't even walk around the room and talk at the same time. Wow. And that was really, really humbling. And then about a month ago, I was like, you need to, not in need as in, but you want to do things differently. I'm scared of pushing my body now, not hard, but just like, I don't want to go back to that position. I'm grateful I can walk around and do things. Yeah. But also I want to live a slightly bigger life and try and make an impact and return to some of the charity adventures. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so where do I start? And I thought, you need to do a park run. You need to start doing them just to get out into those environments, to see how your body responds, and looking at like, what's the fear? So if you've got that challenge going, well, what's the fear? My fear was like, it sort of left me with a peripheral vascular leak thing. And I was like, well, you know, it could trigger that. I'm like, well, what's the fear of it? It'll take me 3 days, 4 days, maybe 5 to recover, but I'll have done it. Yeah. Let's try it. And so that's been a really uncomfortable shift. And then underneath the fear was the normal of like, what will clients think? What will people think? Because I'm much slower, you know, all of those natural things. And it was like, but practice what you teach, get yourself out there, try them. And so the last 2, I've tried that. And it's all those things have happened, but also it's shifted me because I've tried it.
But interesting enough as well, within that environment, you'll meet people at all different paces and areas.
Well, that's the thing. And that's what I teach. So you got to practice what you teach as well. 100%. And so when people say you've run a marathon, you've done an ultra, I'm like, I have, but right now I can just about manage 5K and it takes me 3 days to recover. Sure. So you never know your journey. And then full circle to the beginning, like share your happiness and your joy when it happens, because that builds resilience to then go out when it's hard and try again without too much judgment.
Yeah. No, excellent. Because my daughter's just started doing park runs.
Okay,
so
brilliant.
And then she's volunteering as well.
Yeah.
So it's part of the Duke of Edinburgh thing. Yeah, so she does it and then she runs, and, you know, she's just chipping away, you know, like, oh, I did better than last week, and it's great. You know, it's
that's just amazing.
Just the incremental improvement by doing it.
Yeah.
So, you know, my son made a decision that he was going to cut out sugar and stuff, and now he's down the gym or whatever. But he started making that decision, and now he's going to the gym and stuff. But you know, it's just incremental. There's no pressure. You must. It's like, no, I just want to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah, I'm choosing to. Yeah.
You know, I'm going to say no to that.
Yeah.
As much as I really want it, but I'm going to say no anyway, because it doesn't it might make me feel good for now, but not long term.
Yeah.
So it's been quite interesting to see the next generation coming to those conclusions and making those
yeah,
decisions.
well done them. That's great.
So Kim, how would people get in touch with you if they want to?
At Kim Ingleby on all the socials,
Yeah.
and kimingleby.co.uk or energizeperformance.com.
Excellent.
Kim Ingleby, just send me a message, ask anything. I'm really open. So if anyone wants support or has any questions or just wants to share their accountability from listening to this,
Yeah.
I'm always up for that, because then it's good use of their time listening to this, connecting and saying, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank
sitting
you.
on the sofa and talking through a little bit about your journey and adding a few tips and that. So I really enjoyed it. So
Yeah,
really
it's been
appreciate it.
great.
And we'll get you back.
Yeah,
one day.
part two.
Part two.
Thank you, Darrell.
Thanks so much.
Take
Cheers.
care.